Welcome to the Plague Hive. With the Pro Tour upcoming, where I actually qualified, I will be putting out a couple of videos in a not exactly new format, but something that we haven't really done a whole lot on this channel, where it's just me going over gameplay that I've recorded before. This will be focused on Assassin, obviously. Right now I'm testing Arakni Slip Through the Cracks, but that might change as these videos progress if I figure out that some other deck suits my playstyle better. And the idea here was that I wasn't recording games against random people on Talishar, but I would ask people that I actually know to play matches into me, playing heroes that I think are relevant into the meta at the moment. And the people that I play against are people that I think are actually qualified to play that hero. So they know what they're doing. They're not like beginners. They don't play weird decks. They try to play like meta decks, something that you could find at like a competitive event. So the idea is, okay, I get quality practice out of this. I rewatch the games. Hopefully learn something along the way, and then maybe you guys can pick up one or two things from watching me going over my lines in retrospect. So let me know in the comments down below the video what you think about this format, if I should do more videos like this, or if you'd rather I just do the regular like deck tech interview stuff. And with that out of the way, let's go straight into this video. In the first video of this, I want to say like series, I asked a good friend of mine, a local, who's also been playing in the Pro Tour in the past, to play Aurora. He's a Aurora main at the moment, has been having a lot of fun with the deck, even before the new Armory deck came out. And since I figure Aurora is, at the moment, probably the best deck in the format, her recent like event numbers definitely seem to support that. I figured this is a matchup that no matter what list you play, you absolutely have to have this matchup down. Like if you're playing a deck that has a negative win percentage into Aurora, like you're not at least 50-50 into her, I don't think there's a lot of reason to play that deck right now, personally. If you disagree with that, again, feel free to leave it in the comments below the video. I know some people probably have different ideas about this, but that's my take on this, right? So this Slippy list that I've made is based on the list by Jason Long from the Call in Christchurch, with a couple of changes that I made after talking to him for a little bit about how to adapt the deck to be better into Aurora, basically, right? So we've gone into a more defensive style. Actually, let's go into the video here. So I won the die roll, and I figured, okay, Aurora does have decent setup. So I was thinking about this for a little while. Okay, do I want to go first? Do I want to go second? Like, what's the play there? And I figured in the end, I play an Assassin, I play Arakni. Like, this hero has basically zero setup outside of if you get lucky, right? Sometimes you can push some damage turn 0 because they don't respect your attack reactions. Maybe you get some damage in this way, or you open like a Kiss of Death or something, and then maybe you can get some damage in that way. But for the most part, you don't really have setup. You don't really have anything to do turn 0, so I decided to go second. Even though Aurora has some decent setup, which means that she doesn't hate going first, because she can just do some stuff, maybe play a Channel Lightning Valley, maybe play like make a rune chant or something. So yeah, so I go black text into her, and I go AB1 in the headpiece, and then we side in all of the 4 block D reacts, and I actually take out 2 copies of CNC. The reason here being that she forces you to block like a lot when she has CLV or like burn up shock turns. So it can actually be tricky to keep the 2 cards that you need to send CNC. And then also a lot of the time what these like hyper aggro decks tend to do is they just don't arsenal. Like flat out, they just don't arsenal against you because they know that Assassin has all of the arsenal pressure. So they just go like, okay, whatever, I'm not going to Arsenal here. So the idea here is like the entire deck is like 3 blocks, right? With the exception of Toxicity and Codex of Frailty. Everything else blocks either 3 or 4. So The main game plan against Aurora that I've been running is try to get Kiss of Death or Toxicity into Arsenal, wait for the other one, and meanwhile just play super defensive. And we're going to see that in this game. That's basically what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, my opponent here has basically the perfect opening hand. They have a Channel Lightning Valley, they have an Embodiment of Lightning, and they get an Arsenal. So this is already not looking too good for me. My hand is okay, I would say. Like, it's not great. If this had an attack reaction, it would be a lot better, because this deck does have problems actually converting full hands. And we're going to see that in a second here. Because you can easily go stealth into something else, obviously, but it's tricky to actually convert hands beyond that, right? And that's one of the downsides of building a deck in this way. I just swing the Clave here because, like, kind of whatever, right? And then I decided to go for Prognosis over Art of Desire Body because I figured, okay, ideally I need to disrupt here. And he did respect the Prognosis with an actual card, so I got him down to 4 cards, which is nice. Plunder the Poor is one of those tech pieces that I've been talking with Jason about, specifically against Aurora. The idea is just it's a breakpoint, and their entire deck is a hit for this card, so it generates you silver quite often. And that means you get to recur black text a little more often. It's just some extra block value. Pretty good. They do the classic E-Strike, 5 draw card, getting go again from the embodiment. Very good stuff. They have the Channel Lightning Valley, so I'm immediately forced to think, okay, how do I want to play this? Do I give them 2 cards here? Do I use black text and a shelter to clean block this thing? Obviously risking that they have a lightning press. I think in this matchup, you cannot really afford to play around their combat tricks too much. Like Lightning Press, it doesn't really work. If you overblock or something, like, you have to basically make sure that you get the most amount of value out of every block that you can. This is really critical. This is honestly a matchup where you have to go for the line that gives you the most value. That's what I'm doing here. I'm just going, okay, block black takes, block the 5, let's see what they follow up with, and then take it from there. And that's a problem with these Channel Lightning Valley turns. Sometimes it's okay to give them a card, but for the most part, you really want to try to prevent it. This is one instance where it might be okay. They have 2 cards left in hand, and this Static Shock is currently coming in without an on-hit and without having go again. Because he didn't play a lightning card before, right? So this is currently just vanilla 4, threatening to draw a card, obviously. But it's not gonna deal that extra damage, and it's not gonna have go again unless they proc Snapdragons here, which is something that they might be wanting to do here. And I'm honestly fine getting the snaps out of the way this early, and they decide to respect that, so they don't do that, actually. So on my end, it's just very clean, very good Slippy line. You just go Art of Desire Body into Leave No Witnesses. That's just a really good turn, value-wise. They do have the Sigil of Suffering here. So one thing with Aurora is if they want to get the whole Sigil Channel Lightning Valley thing where they get the value, they have to play it immediately, right? So they cannot wait for you to decide to, A-B the damage. They have to play it immediately. So you always get the information, do they have the Channel Lightning Valley here? Unfortunately, that Sigil was an Arsenal, so our Leave No Witnesses basically just banished the card. It was a red, though. So we do have that second silver. We can get black text basically back immediately here, which is pretty nice. And we arsenal the Spike with Bloodrot, and our Tunic's coming up, so that's pretty good. They play Serenade, one of the new cards from the Armory deck, making the Sizzig, which is just... Serenade is basically just a yellow 0 for 4 go again. That's what it's gonna be used for in most situations. It does have some occasional other parts where you can do stuff with it, which is nice, but for the most part, if you don't have like any setup, you just use this to grab a Skizzik, make an embodiment, give that Skizzik go again, and then you just continue with your turn, you know? So they go Starfall. My hand's a little bit awkward. I have that Spike with Bloodrot in Arsenal. I have Bonds of Agony and the Tarantula Toxin. So I could, in theory, send the Bonds, use Spike, use Toxin if they block it, and then Black Text. But that's a hand that's like, it requires them to actually block, right? Which is something that they might just not do. And they've shown me here that they have the other new card Written in the Stars, right? Which makes an embodiment of lightning and then draws them a card if they've dealt arcane damage. So I'm really thinking here, okay, this Arcanic Shockwave is currently threatening 1 arcane. If they get that arcane damage, then that Written in the Stars makes them an embodiment, which is very good setup for the next turn, and draws them an arsenal. If I deny the arcane here, they arsenal the Written in the Stars, which is fine, but it's like, it's not the best arsenal for them. It's an okay card to arsenal, but obviously they really want to play this here. They want to exchange this for a card off the top, probably like a 0 for 4, maybe it's something like Channel Lightning Valley, whatever, some good card. And that's what they want to do here. That's their ideal line, basically. So I'm really thinking for a long time about this AB here. And if I remember correctly, I decided to do the AB in the end, which I still think is the correct line. It does mean my turn no longer really functions. Yeah, but I do eventually pitch to Arcane Barrier here. Yeah, so one thing I could have done here, which maybe would have been the better line, is to discard Shelter from the Storm for its effect. Instead of doing this, where I actually play it. So this line obviously means I take 3 less damage, but I could have preserved the Bonds line potentially. So it's a little tricky. I mean, I can still send the Bonds, right? I can still go like Hunter's Clave, Flick Hunter's Clave, Black Text, and then use the Spike with Bloodrot in Arsenal. We're gonna see in a second that all of this is kind of irrelevant, because what they decide to do here is they decide to use their Face Purgatory on this turn. And that means they block 7, and I go to exactly 7 with that Bonds. I could have actually played around this line if I had taken the extra 3 and kept the Tarantula Toxin, and then just discard the Leave No Witnesses and use Tarantula Toxin, Black Text, and a Spike with Bloodrot to actually go over the top. So all things considered, I think this was a misplay on my end, and I should have just discarded the Shelter to blank the Arcane and then 1 damage from the Arcanic Shockwave. Just take an extra 3, go to 28, and have that Bonds with the Tarantula Toxin available potentially. And then if they Face Purgatory me, I can discard the Leave No Witnesses and then just shred the Written in the Stars or some other card. If they don't use Face Purgatory here, right, I can still use Flick Knives, Black Text, and a Spike to turn the Bonds online and then still follow it up. And then just put the Tarantula Toxin in Arsenal. So I think overall the line would have just been better. I'm cracking Black Text here simply to be able to rebuy it. So I just want to get that extra block value as soon as possible because they haven't played a channel, they haven't played a burn up shock, so I know there's some turn coming up where they want to send some breakpoints, right? Where it's necessary for me to block a bunch of their breakpoints. So I want to get that Battle Worn 1 back as soon as possible. So I'm wasting the go again from black text. I just care more about the block value here. All right, I'm gonna use Shred for AB here. One downside of this deck is like the pitch curve actually works perfectly well off of yellows, but not everything else that you do does. So the reason why I even pitched to AB here is because I know they had that written from the stars in their arsenal. So if they had done like arcane damage to me, they would have drawn a card here, which obviously I don't want. So they're sending Starfall. I'm just like, okay, not gonna block this. Again, Starfall, most of the time you don't really want to block because it's inefficient to do so. Obviously, when they have like a CLV or a burn-up shock, sometimes you have to. But I generally wouldn't. Rather save your 3 blocks for something where you actually get full value from it, basically. So they're blocking Out of Desire Body. This is perfect. I have a Razor's Edge. I'm thinking for a second about using the Spike here. The reason why I don't is because I haven't seen a Kiss of Death yet. And I want to be able to convert the Kiss of Death with a Spike or with Toxicity, ideally. It's a little bit unlucky because I draw into another Spike with Bloodrot, which is like inefficient, obviously. But I figured I'd rather IP myself here a little bit and then maybe draw into the Kiss of Death. In retrospect, this is probably wrong. I should have used Spike with Bloodrot here off of Tunic. And then just, you know, get an Arsenal reset, basically. So they're not blocking Leave No Witnesses, which gives me another silver. Very nice. So silver generation in this matchup is pretty reliable. You just don't really run enough cards to make use of it. So and this is like, obviously this hand is perfect, right? So I have Toxicity, I have Kiss of Death, I have Spike with Bloodrot, and I have Take Up the Mantle as a follow-up. So I can go Toxicity, Kiss of Death, Spike, and then swing Clave as the follow-up, which is obviously not the perfect follow-up, but it's good enough. So I can either block with the block here with the extra Spike with Bloodrot, or I just go, okay, you know, I'm gonna keep that and arsenal it, which is what I end up what I end up deciding on. So I just go, okay, I don't care. You have a Channel Lightning Valley, you draw a card, you swing Starfall. I don't care. I'm just gonna no block this turn. Gonna make an embodiment, arsenal card. Like, it's fine. This was a relatively mid-turn, all things considered. So they did 7, got an arsenal reset. They have a channel embodiment, so they have a very good turn lined up right now. But my turn is gonna be brutal. So this is basically how you make that matchup work, right? You need to have one of these turns where you just go like, okay, Kiss of Death with Toxicity, with Spike, with Bloodrot, something that's really above rate, where you deal a lot of damage, right? Yeah, now I swing Clave. What they decide to do here is pretty interesting. They block with Zap Clappers, which is basically like they show you an instant and then they deal 1 arcane damage. So this is basically like Sigil of Suffering. And do I want him to draw a card here, or do I pitch, right? I just used Tunic, so I use the last card to pitch. I pitch away the Spike with Bloodrot, because I think giving them a 6-card hand in this spot is extremely dangerous. So I don't want to do that. I do flick the Clave, the Kiss of Death here, obviously. So they get 2 Bloodrot Poxes and they lose an extra 4 life. So they're down to 7 from this turn, and I'm at 21. That does not necessarily mean a whole lot. Like, you should not feel comfortable with these life totals, especially if the Aurora is on a 5-card hand. So, yeah. Again, I pitch here with Channel Lightning Valley. Sometimes on some turns, it's impossible to completely prevent them from getting the draw off of Channel Lightning Valley, but you should try to delay it as long as possible. At least that's my perspective on it. Just try to make it as late in the turn as possible. They have another burn-up shock here, so their turn is like double burn-up shock, which is pretty nasty. They also have a flittering charge that I know about. So I'm pitching again here, just to prevent that Channel Lightning draw, right? They're using Shock Frog, they're saying Starfall. This was another misplay on my end. I should have accepted the 1 damage ping, let them draw the card, and just block the toxicity, block the Starfall with toxicity. Because the problem right now is, yeah, they draw a card, whatever, but this Starfall is currently threatening 12 damage. And I have no good way to block this, because I know they have at least one follow-up and they're probably gonna draw a card. I can put Flick Knives and Tunic in front of this. I wouldn't mind about blocking with Tunic in this spot. Realistically, in this matchup, you get 1 activation out of Tunic before you have to block with it. Maybe 2 if you get lucky. They have a second Channel Lightning Valley, so this turn is basically just, they draw 2 cards, they deal me 12 damage here. From the burn-up shock. 10 damage, sorry. It's a 0 for 5, but it doesn't deal 5 extra, it deals 4 extra. So I take 10 damage from the Starfall. They draw 2 cards. This turn is about as brutal as it gets, basically. So they got Flittering Charge here. At this point, I'm like, okay, the rest of the turn I can just kind of block for value, because it's like, there's no on-hits anymore, like their channels have already triggered, you know, nothing's gonna happen here. The one good thing here is currently they don't actually have a lightning card pitched, so they're gonna lose both of their channels at the end of the turn. That's like, in my mind, the only good thing here. So I have 0 cards in hand. I have basically only Tunic left as like a blocking equipment. I'm at 11, they're at 7, and they have 2 cards left in hand, and they just use their Snapdragons to give this Flittering Charge go again. So I'm not in a good spot right now. This is rough. So they're actually pitching here. They're pitching 2 reds just to keep one of the channels around, make an embodiment for the next turn. They could have also sent the Enlightened Strike for 7 in this spot, which would put me at 4. I'm not sure what's the better line here on their end. I think putting me to 4 is maybe better. But then they lose both of their channels, and they know they have full tempo into me, right? So they can play another channel with an embodiment, so they have another good turn. So I think the idea here is that he was kind of playing around drawing a brick hand here, which I think makes sense. Fortunately for me, on this turn, I draw a very defensive hand, so I just get like 2 4-power D-reacts, which is amazing. I can just use the Sink Below here. He does have Somersault, which is annoying because he can play the Entwined Lightning again, but it happens, right? I decide if I want to sink, doing a little bit of math. So basically, the reason why I'm thinking about the sink here is because, I mean, realistically, I would sink Mantle, right? And then I was thinking, okay, the only thing I can draw that's actually better than Mantle in this slot is a Codex. And I have a chance to draw Toxicity, which is actively worse because it's a 2-block. So I think what ends up happening is that I decide to not sink this and just go with, okay, I'm just going to use Mantle as a 3-block here, probably in conjunction with Tunic. Yeah, I'm just checking the graveyard, doing the math. I haven't seen a Codex yet, except for the one that I pitched in turn 0. Or turn 1, rather. So there's a chance that I draw into a Codex here, but it's not like, it's not super high, and I'm at 11. Like, I don't need to take crazy chances. Apparently, I do decide to risk it, and I draw into another 3 blocks, so it ends up being relatively irrelevant. So this has go again. And I know he has a sizzle in hand, right? So if I don't block this out, and he gets to draw another 0 for 4 here, it's pretty gnarly, because he can convert that into 7 damage. Pretty nasty. And my hand is kind of like Prowl into Plunder is not very good. It's like 2 card 7. The only thing I'm thinking about is I'm threatening lethal here, even with the Prowl, and he has no armor left. So the Prowl into Plunder basically means he has to give me 2 cards to even stay alive. And then Plunder is, if he doesn't full block it, probably gonna give me another silver, which is pretty good. But I do decide against that line. I just play it conservatively. I'm disciplined about it. I just go, okay, we're good. I don't need to threaten lethal immediately because I have Flick Knives and I have 2 Claves. So he has to full block the Plunder or he's dead in 2 turns. He does draw off the Starfall here, which is annoying. And it ends up being gone in a flash. So he's pushing another 4 damage. I still think it's correct the way I played the line. Because, like, yeah, he's playing the Starfall. It's annoying. I go to 5. But we're still in the spot where he has to full block this, or he's dead in 2 turns if I get to keep a single card. I do remind him, like, you can't go to 1 here. Because, like, I have Flick Knives. So, yeah, he's giving me 2 cards. He blocks 4, which is fine. Like, that's kind of what I wanted. I get him down to 2 cards. And, like, Aurora on 2 cards has a very limited amount of damage. Unfortunately, he does have Somersault here, which means he does get the Lightning Surge back. But he's still at 2 cards, so there's not a big difference. It's just a better card. He's got Arc Lightning, which isn't gonna do a whole lot here. But I'm at 5, so I kind of have to respect it. So I think the play I go for here is I just pitch the Toxicity, because that's not really doing anything in this hand, and it only blocks 2. And then I just give 3 for the Lightning Surge. He gets to deal 1 damage to me. I convert this. This is fine. I can do Infiltrate into Codex of Frailty. This is actually great. That's one of the better 2-card hands you can send in this deck. And then obviously I get a Leave No Witnesses because I know he doesn't have any armor left anymore. And he also doesn't have a lot of D-Reacts left in the deck. So he's probably gonna grab a Lightning Surge and then give me 2 cards to protect it and just leave it for a turn to get the full value out of it. Yep, he's grabbing Lightning Surge, makes sense. This is what you're gonna mostly see. He's giving me 2 Snatches, which hurts to see for him, obviously. I get Kiss of Death and I draw up into a Tarantula Toxin. He's actually sending the Lightning Surge, but that's a relatively easy 3 block here. I'm actually considering just not blocking at all, because I can go Kiss of Death, Razor's Edge, Tarantula Toxin into CNC. So I just go to 1 to really secure the kill here. And I have Widow Veil Respirator in case he has any shenanigans, so that's fine. And I'm just dealing 7 here, so that's game. All right. So as we can see from the post-game stats, the key turn in this game basically was this one, right? Turn 6. That's where I did the big toxicity, Kiss of Death, Spike with Bloodrot line, 25 value on the turn. And that's kind of what you need, right? So the whole game plan against Aurora basically is try to get that one turn where you have like a good Kiss of Death line. And the rest of the game, you're just on the defense. You just play good value hands, right? You play 1 or 2 card plays, and Slippy has a lot of good 1 and 2 card hands, basically. At least if you configure the deck in this way, right? You have a lot of good 1 and 2 card lines that you can play against an aggressive deck like Aurora and really make sure that you fully convert every point of value, right? So if they're playing Starfall and it's not threatening anything, like there's no Channel Lightning Valley, there's no Burn Up Shock behind it, right? Try to not block it and then keep your 3 block for something else where you're gonna get the full value from that block. That's basically how you have to approach this matchup, right? Is like really try to squeeze every single point of value out of it and then stay alive for long enough to find that good Kiss of Death line and use that to pivot the game around and then eventually win it. As usual, you're an assassin, so the lower the opponent's life total is, the more threatening your deck becomes. Especially with cards like Kiss of Death, with cards like Tarantula Toxin, stuff like that. All of the attack reactions, basically, where you can just go, okay, I can just, kill you from like 5 life or something if you don't respect my damage. So that's where you try to get. And the best way to get there is a Kiss of Death combo turn with something like Tarantula Toxin or Spike with Bloodrot or ideally Toxicity. That's why it's in the deck after all. Don't expect to get huge value out of Tunic. Tunic is one piece of equipment that I was actually thinking about maybe switching for something else. I just don't think any other equipment you have access to actually gives you better value. That's kind of the problem. So in theory, you could obviously run Redback Shroud. That would get you most of the time the same value. You can block with it. You can use it once to discount a Spike with Bloodrot. That's what you mostly use that tuning counter for. And then maybe you get to rebuy it, but you're already running black text for that. So it's like, doesn't do much. And you want Tunic for the longer, grindier matchups anyway. So it's about the same amount of value. And then the other option obviously would be Blood Splattered Vest, which in theory could give you like maybe 2 resources, maybe 3 or 2 resources on a block. So either way, you're getting 3 value out of it. But the problem with that card, in my opinion, is that with this specific configuration of the deck, you almost never dagger. You saw it in this game. I swung a dagger twice, right? Once on turn 1 because my hand just didn't have anything better to do. And then once on the Kiss of Death combo turn because I didn't have a follow-up. I just had a resource card, so I had to swing dagger in order to actually get the follow-up attack so I could flick the Kiss of Death. And then sometimes, obviously, you flick the daggers, but that also doesn't happen a whole lot. So in general, because of the way that the deck is set up, right, I think Vest doesn't make a lot of sense for it. You could totally build a Slippy deck that makes more use of Vest, right? By running a slightly higher blue count or maybe running some of the dagger recursion pieces, right? Like the retrieve cards, like pick up the point. You could play that, and I think in that version of the deck, Vest would probably be better, specifically into the aggro decks. But for this one, I'm just running Tunic. Basically, it's just Tunic for every matchup, and that's just, it's good enough. It's 2 value, sometimes maybe 3, and it's a little more flexible than Redback Shroud would be because you can also use that Tunic to pay for like a sigil of suffering on their turn. You can sometimes use it for a codex CNC. So there's a couple of lines that you can take. Or maybe you draw like an all red hand and you have a CNC and you really need to disrupt their arsenal. So you can just go like, okay, Tunic, pitch a red, send a CNC. So Tunic is just a little more flexible than all of the other alternatives. That's why I'm still running it, even though it's not super good into aggro decks like Aurora. So, okay. So that's the video for today. Again, let me know in the comments below what you think about this format in general. If you want to see more videos like this, I will definitely record more videos just because I want to watch back my own gameplay, kind of analyze it and try to spot mistakes that I made, right? And improve that way. And maybe in this way, some of you will also be able to benefit a little bit from my mistakes and you don't have to make them yourself. So ideally, we all learn something here. All right. See you in the next one.